Hey, good day, everybody. My name is Peter Brooks. I'm also known as the Builderall Dude, and today we're going to be looking at design principles for websites. This is just going to be an introductory look, and I'm just going to cover harmony, clarity, and balance today. So it shouldn't be too much. Now, what is harmony in graphic design? Basically, it's when all the graphical elements come together in a meaningful way. The graphics and the text work together in a sense of harmony or flow with each other. And as you can see from this graphic, its I bleed pixels, and the word pixels is made up of pixels, and the blood in the graphic is also pixels. So that has a certain degree of harmony between the graphic and the content, the formal approach, and what the content is. With a website, it's basically the same thing. You want to achieve harmony by proximity of elements, repetition of elements, the continuation of lines, and we'll talk a little bit about that, vectors, unobstructed graphics and text. This is going to be really important throughout the presentation. Achieve harmony by restraining your use of color, fonts, and other graphic elements. You want to keep everything in agreement or accord. And a harmonious website has a certain flow to it, and I'll show you how that's created. And it's achieved through the balance of negative space and positive space. And your relationships between your elements are clear and ambiguous in a harmonious website. So why have harmony in the first place? What problems does harmony solve? Well, it lets people know you put some thought behind your design. It creates a sense of comfort, trust, security, organization, direction. When elements are overlapping each other, for instance, and the website looks kind of messy, it's hard to trust that organization. Harmony is basically what people like when they go to a website. It's the essence of professionalism, quality, and care for your audience. And some sites have more harmony than others, and let's take a look at one that does not have very good harmony to it. This is the Exmouth View Hotel, which I think is in Babacombe. And you can see a lot of things are pulling this website in different directions. One of the things you have is 4 different versions of the sky. You have one version here, one in the background, another sky here, and another sky there. None of them match up. You're using 4 different fonts or font styles. This is 1, 2, 3, and 4. Anything underlined on a web page is going to be assumed to be a link or interactive. This site also has poor use of negative space. Everything is just kind of randomly put here. It's not really thought out. The colors don't match the brand. I don't know if you could see in this sign, but the brand is yellow and a pale blue. It's not reflected on the website. It'd be really good if people arrive at the website and the website looks like the hotel that they're staying in. And there is a need to kind of bring these elements together a little bit more and to clearly differentiate them and separate them. They're just here without any graphics to help show what's what and where we're supposed to go. This is another hotel website, which I would argue has excellent harmony. Notice that you've got this, really nice contrast down here. Let's see, everything has its space in this image. The graphics and the text are working together. They're not really overlapping with each other. In fact, the only thing that's overlapping is really this tree and the pole, and that's a given. But this overlap is not, it doesn't distract that much. And is an excellent use of contrast. Notice that they darken the top along here in order to bring the interactivity to give it more contrast. And we'll talk about how important contrast is, but everything has its space. The tree has its space. It's creating a nice little envelope for the hotel itself. This being on the darkest part of the frame gives it great contrast. There's nothing distracting here. And more than that, it's creating this flow. This flow is the circular pattern being created by the graphics and the text and the elements. So this website has really good harmony. The other thing I want to point out is the fact that the lightest part of the frame is going to be what people are most attracted to. Another great example of harmony, and this one happens to be one of the templates that you have in Builderall. Very nice flow, nice use of contrast, very easy to see. The elements are separated here. The text is separated from the graphics. There's a continuation of lines. So each person's foot, or the direction in which they're looking, creates what's called a vector. So her feet are creating a vector, which is a natural direction that the eye flows along just by being here. And so that's what I mean by continuation of lines. The continuation of lines is good. The only thing I might argue is having his feet cut off is a interrupted vector or an interrupted line. But again, there's no overlap. Very good harmonious site. This site is extremely busy. Very complicated graphic here, but still it has harmony. The only time you have overlapping elements is at the interactivity, and that is kind of important. We'll talk about that in a minute. But again, everything has its space. It's all lined up, deliberately and given their own room to go in. The biggest problem you have with this site, I would say, is that this, again, because the white attracts attention and you've got so much white, I would probably consider choosing a different color for the interactivity, maybe the red from the jelly bean or something, but that would be something I might test. But again, this is a very good harmonious website. This site, very aggressive, but still retains the harmony that you're looking for. She's running off to the right, which is not distracting from the text. The REE is kind of bringing us back to the text. Notice how clear it is. We've been expecting you. It's a very appealing copy right there. You know exactly what the interactivity is, what the call to action is, and it's very appealing. So it's an aggressive site because the graphics and images are really big. They're in your face. They're highly energetic. But at the same time, it's a website that does have good harmony. So in order to create harmony on your website, again, just give all the different elements their space. Try to get things to work together and use the brand's colors and restrain from the use of color as much as possible. Finally, take advantage of vectors and shapes and use continuation of lines to try to create harmony. So what is clarity in graphic design? Now, clarity is the art of being clear, coherent, transparent, understood. The fundamental principle through clarity is, though clarity is economy of space. Here again, you see the only overlapping element is the interactivity, but this site is very clear. What am I doing here? This is the place where you go to start and grow your business. That's clear. Want to be an entrepreneur? Learn how to get started on your business in 10 steps. I know exactly why I'm here. I know exactly what this website is about. This woman here is kind of illustrating the type of person you expect at the site. It's very serious, but notice also by the direction of her body and the flow, it's creating a flow and a circular pattern here. Extremely well done website from the perspective of both clarity and harmony. So clarity for a website can be achieved through excellent and economic copy. Honesty, being very specific about what you're about, using words and images people will understand, being brief and unambiguous. Keep your background quiet, and as much as possible, allow the background to work with the graphics or the text. No distracting animations, widgets, images, text, ads, or buttons. And you stick to only what is necessary in order to be. So what problems does clarity solve? Why should we do it? Well, it lets people know that you know what you're doing. It's highly respectful to be clear on your website. It's very considerate of your audience. It's very generous. 99% of the time that people will be on the internet, they won't be on your site. They may want to be on some other site or have something else to do. So you want to get them on and off as quickly as possible. And clarity allows you to do that. You also don't want a lot of questions and stuff like that, and sort of ambiguity. So it generates a sense of authority, leadership, trust, cleanliness, order. It's the highest level of trust. If you're able to be clear, people have a sense that you know what you're talking about. It's also speed is a problem that clarity, as we said, getting people on and off. Anybody figure out what this website is about? This, believe it or not, is the Yale School of Art. Okay, not very clear at all. The only thing that you can say is it's showing the upcoming lectures. Here again, not very clear of what this site is. So many things are competing with each other. The ad up top, which you can't even really tell is an ad. The headlines, this graphic over here, the high contrast right here in the middle. Hard to get clarity of what this site is about, intentionally so. But this, on the other hand, is clarity. Why am I here? What is this website? This is where you go if you want to make your website better instantly. It's clear, okay? And this site is supported by the fact that they're giving you a free heat map for your websites. So excellent use of clarity. Why am I on this site? Oh, this is the e-commerce platform made for you. Very clear. Excellent use of clarity. This one, I would argue, is a bit more problematic. Again, why am I on this way? All systems grow. It doesn't really tell me anything. Software to fuel your growth, build deeper relationships from the first hello to happy customer and beyond. A bit much in the way of text as well, or copy. What I would suggest for this website is use software to fuel your growth as your main headline, and use all systems grow for your button to be your interactive. But it's still a very clean website. It's very clear. You could argue the copy is not clear, but you cannot argue in this website that the graphic design is not clear, because the graphic design is really tastefully done. So, to create clarity on your website, simply reduce everything to just whatever your product is about. Don't put anything distracting, irrelevant, or even exciting. The images should really support the text if you use images at all. Have just one thing you want everyone to pay attention to, or one thing you want them to do, and use no more than 3 elements, preferably 2 graphical elements on your screen, and it will be clear because you'll have reduced it to just its essence. Moving on to balance. What is balance in graphic design? And this one, I can guarantee, will be the most fun. The balance has to do with the placement of graphical elements to occupy negative space within the frame. There's 3 forms of balance generally: symmetry, asymmetry, and discordant. And it suggests motion, and balance really affects emotions a lot. So if you look at this graphic, and well, it's actually a photograph, but it's a graphical photograph. Right now, you're wondering how all this stuff is being balanced, and you're kind of amazed that it is, and impressed, if you will. The point is that the human eye, the human mind, is naturally going to try to create balance out of things. And that's really, really important. It just is something we do. So for a website, balance can be achieved through the size of the graphical elements, the density of them, the contrast, which will be really important, the color, the element itself, whether it's text or a graph or graphics. The focus, you can use selective focus in websites, and the saturation. So what problems does balance solve? Why is balance important? Again, people are naturally looking for balance. And so when they achieve it, it gives them a sense of comfort. Designers take advantage of that craving in order to create momentum. I'm going to show you how they do that. And it causes or encourages people to act or consider. And balance helps with the hierarchy of information or information architecture. So throughout the history of writing, we always called it a hierarchy of information. The most important things go first and the secondary things go last. But then with the introduction of the internet and stuff, we now call it information architecture. Go figure. Even the frame itself, which is pure negative space, has magnetism. And let's take a look at what I'm talking about. So if I just put one graphical element in the upper right-hand corner of the frame, the corners of the frame act as magnets. They seem to be pulling the blue ball out toward the upper right-hand side. Because it's a ball, you may have also the sense that it's going to drop or being pulled down just from your visual memory. But for the most part, I would say that all of this negative space is kind of pushing that ball. The corners of the frame have magnetism and they're attracting it. Now, if I introduce another graphical element, and this element is called a vector, which is any graphical element that has direction, all right, and space and graphical weight. Notice how it kind of counterbalances the magnetism. Even though it's pointing straight to the ball is not being sucked out quite as much because of this graphical element here. So there's a little bit more balance in this frame. And even though you would think that because it's an arrow, it would push it further out, it's in fact the graphical size, the density, and the saturation of it, which are helping to create a sense of balance in this frame. Now comes a really important lesson. So, a large object desaturated. A large object has a lot of graphic, magnetism. A lot of attention is drawn to it. But this object, which is smaller, has greater contrast. So I would bet right now that your eyes are more attracted to the small ball than they are the large ball. If that is the case, then it proves the theory or the point that contrast outdoes size every time. It's true in music, it's true in photography, it's true in writing, and it's true in graphic design. Contrast is more powerful than size. It is better to say something short with high contrast than it is to give a long speech that has no contrast and is basically the same. If I increase the contrast, that is black being the opposite of white, the pure opposite, notice how the effect is magnified. The black ball draws your attention much greater than the big desaturated blue ball. This is an example of symmetry. Both graphic elements equal on both sides of the frame. Perfect balance, right? Excellent. Used throughout history, okay, for excellence in art and architecture and all of that. The problem with symmetry for the World Wide Web, however, is that you don't know where to go. See, unlike a painting where you just sit there and you're passive, the web calls for people to be interactive. And when you look at these two blue balls, your eye just goes from one to the other, to the other, to the other, to the other. There's no momentum created here. So I would argue that symmetry should be avoided in favor of asymmetry because you build momentum toward interactivity. Give me a second here. So if I shift these two balls to an asymmetrical blend. Notice how powerful this is. Because we read from left to right, the lower right-hand side of the frame, which is also the place where if we were reading a book, we would pinch the page in order to turn it to the next page. And there's, centuries of, this habit having taken place, which has not been erased from our genetic memory yet. It builds momentum. This element here is assisting with the graphic weight of this element here. And it's sort of, shifting our attention and our desire and our willingness to go to the next page, to go to the right, to click this object. All this negative space here is completely lost. All the focus is here, and of that, this one is even more, and that's because of the magnetism of the frame and also the placement of the graphic element. If I take it to the other side, notice again, and this is very consistent with web conventions, this gives the element or the sense that we're going backwards, okay? So the left side of the frame has a totally different orientation to it, if you will, that if I click this, I'm going to go one page back. And of course, that's why people put home way up here, is to take you back. So what you'll want to do is you could create a sort of a cascading number of graphical elements that lead people into the next page. And this one, you can clearly see the ball is falling down this way. This is where the graphic weight is, and it's brought about from a lot of this pushing down on it. It doesn't go the opposite way, left to right. This is not the most important. So you can use this to try to encourage people toward interactivity by creating momentum, using the magnetism of the frame, and the fact that we go from left to right. If I put a text here, what's next? You almost have to click on that, just because it's just a natural momentum flow type of thing. So let's play with this a little bit. Over here, we've got elements with great amount of density. We've got a number of them too. The quantity of them is greater. So this is going to cause a lot more attention brought onto this right side. Also, again, it's playing a little bit with the magnetism of the frame on the right side. This balance a little bit more stable on here. This might be your interactive element, and obviously this is the element that's going to take you back to the previous or page or to home. So there is a balance created there. If I eliminate the middle area, now this is being pulled even further, stronger out, and there isn't as much interplay between the two of these. If anything, these are trying to pull that in a little bit, but I believe that they are overpowered by the magnetism of the frame. If I increase the contrast of the what's called an anomaly, because it's different from all the other elements, and I've truly created as an anomaly by using the black, it creates a further separation, the contrast, but this has a lot more power now for whatever it's going to do. If its momentum seems to be taking it out, or if it's going to interact with these guys, it becomes a lot more powerful. If I switch the space, totally different, and this shows you how the frame is kind of out of balance, if you will, naturally. I can have all the density, all the elements, and all the stuff I want up here. The power is still down here. And that's a very different effect from the previous. So back to our good old Exmouth Hotel. Where is the balance in this? It's hard to know what you want us to pay attention to first, and second, and third. If, for example, they had selected just one graphic element, it would have a bit more balance. This side could cascade a little bit more, and this side being a separate element, even though it's just kind of thrown in there. So let's take a good example of good balance. So the first thing anyone is going to look at is someone's face, all right? From the time we are born, we study faces, and it never stops until we can't see again. We naturally are attracted to faces more than anything else. The second is going to be this white space here. Now remember, the lighter the area in the frame, the more attention it's going to draw. So they've used the weakest part of the frame and bolstered it by adding white here, all right? And this area being darker. Notice they use this graphical element to point to what they want you to do. There's graphic density here. There's graphic density here. They are not symmetrical. And notice by using the color, you're more attracted to the contrast, the saturation. You're more likely to click on this one than you are that one. So again, use of balance in order to encourage interactivity and create a sense of comfort, trust. You belong here. This site was made for you. Microsoft Go. The background, very quiet, really good contrast. You're introducing a line here or a vector, and it is satisfied by this. This is the brightest part of the frame. The shop now also pointing to the right. If that triangle or that little greater than sign was pointed in the other direction, we'd be having a totally different conversation. If also the computer was facing in the opposite direction, if they turned it 180 degrees or had it facing off the frame to this way, again, a totally different, and that would throw off the balance. But everything is pointing toward this highly desirable computer. Really strong graphical intensity here. Of course, a photograph, is going to be very powerful, and especially one with a face, and especially one where the person is looking right at you. Less so here, more graphic intensity here. Notice on the lower right, watch his story. Really powerful, really well done. You know what's first, you know what's second, you know what's third. Right, and get started. The only color in this sea of black and white, except for the flag there. Let's look at symmetry. I am going to tell you, to me, it just doesn't do it. Even though you do have asymmetry caused by the color of the graphical elements here, this whole thing is symmetry. If I divided the frame in half, it would be equal in both parts. It really doesn't encourage interactivity for me. And take a look at another one, another example of symmetry. Divide the screen in half, both sides, but I don't know what they want me to do. Do you want me to preview the landing page builder, or do you want me to see how this program can help me? What do you want me to do? I really don't know, okay, because they both have equal weight. I do like the fact that the background is quiet. You have good contrast here. Look at the use of negative space. By not putting anything here, you bring out the graphic even stronger. So there are some really tastefully done things here, but it's not balance. It's good clarity, but it's not balance. So to create balance on your website, just understand how the frame has magnetism. Use contrast and color and placement to help people interact. I would avoid symmetry as much as possible, and I also recommend that sites be calm, tranquil, inviting, and pleasing. Not too much energy. Try not to if you can avoid it. So this has been Introduction to Web Page Design. We talked about harmony, clarity, and balance. Harmony, getting your elements and text to work together. Clarity, being economical and transparent, easy to understand. And balance, occupying the negative space to build momentum. These things will build trust, professionalism, thought, and care. And you give each element its space and try not to overlap things when you're creating web pages. I would treat a web page like it's a billboard. No more than 3 elements, preferably 2. You now know what magnetism is in the frame, magnetism graphically. You understand density, screen real estate, and the power of contrast. You should know to only underline interactive elements and refrain from using so many colors and fonts, etc. And finally, you want to just keep it simple, stupid. Know what you want people to do and just move those who are willing to the next step as easily and as quickly as possible. My name is Peter Brooks. I hope you've enjoyed the presentation. To contact me, you can go to petercbrooks.com or look for more courses at consciousstate.teachable.com. Once again, thank you very much.